The wind howled outside as dark clouds covered the sky. It had been raining for hours, cold and heavy, turning the red soil into mud. Mark sat alone inside his small metal house, built into the rocks of a quiet, empty planet. He had lived here alone. For many years, far from war, far from people, far from the past, his face was rough and tired. His eyes sharp, always watching, always waiting. He liked silence. It was safe, it was quiet, until today, a loud knock came at the door. One knock, then two more. Mark stood still, his hand reaching slowly for the old rifle on the table. Nobody knocked on his door. Nobody came to this place. He moved to the door and pressed the small camera screen. Static. Then a blurry image he saw. Two shapes, small, shaking, standing in the rain. A woman and a child, aliens. Mark's breath slowed. His heart beat heavier. Why would aliens be at his door, now, after all this time? He opened the door just a little, rifle hidden behind it. The woman looked up, her face tired and wet. She held a small girl in her arms, who looked no older than 5. Both had dark skin with light markings glowing softly. Their clothes were torn. The woman spoke with a broken voice. "Please. We need help." Mark did not answer right away. He looked at the girl. Her eyes were big, scared, and she was shivering. Then he saw something strange. A small symbol glowing faintly on the girl's neck. A human military code, long forgotten. Mark opened the door wider, still careful, still quiet. He let them in. The woman helped the girl sit near the old heater. Steam rose from their clothes as they tried to warm up. Mark said nothing for a while, just watched. Finally, he asked, "Who are you?" The woman looked at him with tired eyes. "My name is Lyra. This is my daughter. Sorry. We don't want trouble. We're just trying to stay alive," she added. Mark nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed on the mark on the girl's neck. That symbol. Where did she get it? He asked. Lyra looked down, silent, then whispered, "It's from her father." He was human. Mark felt a deep sting in his chest. Memories rising, the war, the blood, the screams. He had seen many die, both human and alien. He had lost people too, Lyra continued. "They're looking for us." "Bad people? They want sorry." Mark asked, "Why come here?" Lyra's voice cracked. "Because her father once told me, if anything ever happened, I should find a man named Mark." Mark's eyes narrowed. Her father knew him before he could ask more. The lights in the room flickered. The child, sorry, touched a small broken drone lying in the corner. It suddenly sparked, a faint hum filling the air. The drone powered on, even though it had no energy source left. Mark stepped back in surprise. "How did she do that?" he asked sharply. Lyra shook her head. "We don't know. Started last week. She touches machines, and they respond." Mark looked at Sari, who stared at the drone with wide, quiet eyes. There was something deep and strange in them. Something old, something not normal. Suddenly, the old radar screen in the corner beeped. A signal movement. Someone was nearby. Mark moved fast, shutting down all power. Pulling the metal covers over the windows, he grabbed his rifle, looked out through a hidden slit in the wall. Shapes in the rain. At least 2, maybe 3. Not locals, not friendly. He turned to Lyra. "You brought danger here." Lyra held Sari close. Shaking, "We had no choice." Mark looked at the child again. Something told him this was bigger than just a woman and her daughter running from soldiers. This was something connected to the war, 2 secrets long buried. To him, he had left that life behind, but now it had come knocking at his door, literally, as the storm roared louder outside, and strange shadows moved in the distance. Mark made his choice. He walked to the closet, opened a locked box, and pulled out a small badge. Old, worn, and marked with his rank from the war. He looked at Lyra, then at Sari. "If they want trouble," he said quietly, "they found the wrong house." Asterisk's rain still poured outside, but inside the house, the world had changed. Mark sat in silence, watching the little girl as she slept on the old couch. Lyra stood nearby, eyes heavy, shoulders tense. They hadn't spoken for a while. The storm covered the planet like a curtain. But the real storm was inside Mark's mind. He couldn't stop thinking. Why would a child have a military mark? Why could she control machines? Why did her father send her here to him? Mark looked at the badge in his hand. His badge from the war. He hadn't touched it in years. Not since the last day he saw his unit burn. Not since the screams, the fire, and the betrayal. "You said her father knew me," Mark asked finally, his voice low and calm. Lyra nodded. "Yes. He fought with you, long ago, during the Battle of Grithin Ridge." Mark looked up sharply. "Only a few of us survived Grithin." Lyra's eyes filled with pain. "His name was Yalin." Mark's heart froze. He remembered Yalin young, brave, always asking questions, always smiling. Yalin had saved Mark's life once, pulled him from rubble during a bomb strike, and then it was gone, listed as missing, presumed dead. "He's dead," Mark said coldly. Lyra nodded. "Yes, he died. 5 years ago. But before that, he told me about you. He said you were the only man he trusted." Mark leaned back, hand on his rifle, mind racing. Lyra sat down across from him, her voice quiet. "After the war, he didn't go back to Earth. He disappeared. Joined a hidden group. Rebels, freedom fighters. I don't know what to call them." She looked down. "We tried to live quietly. Now. But then Sari started to change." Mark glanced at the child, sleeping peacefully. She was born different. Lyra continued. "Machines talk to her. They feel her. She doesn't even try. They just respond." Mark asked, "Did Yalin know?" Lyra nodded. "He feared it. Said the military would come for her if they ever found out." Mark stood and walked to the window, wiping the glass clean. The rain had stopped, but the night was still dark. He remembered something from long ago. Project Helix, a secret program, shut down years ago. Rumors said it involved hybrid tech, mixing human DNA with alien elements to create smart blood. Able to control machines, but it was banned. Locked away because it was too dangerous. Was Sari the result of that? Mark turned back to Lyra. "How long have you been running?" 2 months, she said. "We lost our ship. We've been hiding ever since." Suddenly, the radar beeped again. Soft but clear. 1 dot, then 2. Moving closer, Mark rushed to the table. Tapped the screen. No signals on public channels. Whoever they were moving quiet, invisible. He grabbed a small box and placed it on the floor. It unfolded into a metal spider bot and crawled to the door. Silent and fast, it activated its camera and sent a live feed to the screen. 2 figures, armored, walking slowly, scanning, searching. Mark zoomed in. On one of them was a black badge. A snake curled around a gear. He knew that symbol. It belonged to Unit 9. A secret ops team once used to erase war crimes and capture forbidden tech. They weren't soldiers, they were hunters, and now they were here. "They found you," Mark said, voice flat. Lyra grabbed Sari and held her tight, whispering softly in her ear. Mark opened his locker and pulled out an old case. Inside was a hand-sized cube. He pressed it, and the cube unfolded into a sleek weapon, half gun, half tool, one of a kind. A gift from Yalin. Many years ago, Mark had kept it hidden all this time. Just in case. Now it was time. He looked at the child. "Does she understand what's happening?" Lyra shook her head. "She understands more than we think. Hush. But she doesn't speak much." Mark knelt beside Sari, who opened her eyes slowly. She looked at him and smiled. Not with fear, but with calm. Then she said softly, "They're not here for me." "They're here for you." Mark froze. "How do you know that?" he asked. She touched her head. "I heard them. When they scanned the door, they said your name." The air went cold. Memories flooded Mark's mind. Missions, codes, secrets. Buried deep, he wasn't just a forgotten soldier. He was a key to something they needed, something he no longer remembered. But the girl, she remembered it for him, because whatever was inside her was once inside him too. And now, the past was no longer sleeping, it was waking up, and it had found them. The house was silent, too silent. The storm had passed, but danger had not. Mark moved through the dark hallway of his home with quiet steps, his weapon ready, eyes sharp, outside. Something was moving, not loud, not fast, but steady, shadows. Walking like they knew this place, like they had been here before. Sari sat on the floor, drawing circles with her finger in the dust. But they weren't just circles, they were patterns, old and strange, glowing softly under her touch. Mark noticed them and stopped. "What are those?" he asked, voice low. Sari looked up, her eyes calm and deep. "A memory," she whispered. "But it's not mine." Lyra held her daughter close. "She does this sometimes when danger is near." Mark frowned. Watching the pattern change, it looked like a map, but not of any place he knew. He walked to the wall and pressed a button, revealing a hidden panel, one he hadn't used in years. The screen flickered on, showing a live feed from the spider bot outside. The two strangers were still there, standing at the edge of the rocks, watching. The house waiting, but something was wrong. One of them looked human, tall, armor-plated. With a heavy weapon, the other didn't look like anything Mark had ever seen. Its body shimmered, bending light around it. Like it was half visible, half hiding. "Stealth tech," Mark said. "That's military grade." Lyra's face turned pale. "They're not here to talk." Mark nodded. "No, they're here to erase." He turned to Sari. "Can you do that thing again with the machines?" She tilted her head. "Maybe, if they're close." Suddenly, a deep hum filled the room, low and cold. The lights flickered. Walls shook softly. Mark grabbed the cube weapon, aiming it toward the ceiling. "I installed defense lines in the rocks outside," he said, "but only I can trigger them." He walked to a console, typing fast, unlocking a security grid that hadn't been touched in years. Red lights turned green, one by one, outside, under the soil. Old turrets powered up, silent and waiting. Then, from the screen, Mark saw it. The shimmer moved, fast, jumping from rock to rock. "Getting closer, target 1 is active," Mark said quietly, pressing a button. A sharp beam fired from a hidden gun on the roof, missing the shimmer by inches. The figure leaped to the side, but for a moment, its cloak failed. Mark froze. Under the shimmer was not a human. Not even an alien, it was a machine. A biometal hybrid, something built, not born. "They sent an echo unit," Mark whispered. "That means this isn't a random hunt. This is a mission." Lyra looked confused. "What's an echo unit?" Mark stared at the screen. "An assassin. Designed to erase targets without leaving evidence." Inside, Sari stood and walked to the wall. Touching it gently, the lights flickered again, but this time, the power didn't fail. It changed. Machines inside the house began to glow with the same light as her hands. The defense system blinked, then synced to her pulse. Mark turned to her in disbelief. "You're controlling them?" She nodded. "They listen to me, even the ones underground." She added, with a small smile. Mark moved fast, grabbing old gear from his storage, a scanner, a light mask, a pair of gloves built to track energy signals. The girl wasn't just connected to machines, she was activating them, waking them. And whatever was inside her, it wasn't just tech. It was ancient, powerful, and buried deep in her blood. The echo unit moved again, this time directly toward the back of the house. Mark pointed to Lyra. "Get into the bunker now." Lyra and Sari moved through the hallway. Down a hidden path behind the kitchen wall, Mark stayed behind, standing. In the living room, gun ready, heartbeat steady, then the back wall exploded. Stone and smoke filled the air, and through the hole came the echo unit, tall and shining. Its face blank, cold, without eyes. Mark fired once, twice, but the bullets bounced off its skin. It stepped forward, silent, deadly, just before it reached him. The floor lit up. A blast of light came from below, a shockwave of pure force. The machine flew backward, smashing through the wall, crashing outside into the dirt. Sari stood at the hallway entrance, her hands glowing, her eyes calm. Mark stared, breathless. "You did that?" She nodded slowly. "It was hurting you outside." The echo unit twitched, broken but not dead. Mark looked at the child again. She wasn't just special. She was dangerous, and maybe, just maybe, the last hope for something bigger, far bigger than any of them knew. Asterisk smoke rose from the broken wall. Mark stepped out carefully, his weapon raised. The echo unit was still lying in the dirt, sparks crawling across its shattered chest. Its arms twitched, trying to reboot, but Sari had stopped it somehow. With a single blast of energy, he looked back at her, standing calm in the doorway, eyes glowing faintly. She was more than anyone had guessed. Inside the house, Lyra patched, her arm still shaking from the explosion. Mark walked back in, closing what was left of the door. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll send more." Lyra nodded, holding Sari close. "Where will we go?" Mark didn't answer at first. His mind was already working, digging through old files in his memory. "There's a place," he said slowly, "underground. A war bunker I built long ago, before I gave up fighting." He opened a panel on the floor, revealing a ladder that led into darkness. Below was a narrow tunnel lit by dim lights. They climbed down one by one and reached a large chamber carved into stone. Screens lined the walls, old equipment covered in dust. A map of the sector blinked softly on a dead console. Mark walked to it, wiped the screen clean, and pressed a series of buttons. Nothing happened. Then Sari stepped forward, placed her hand on the console, and whispered, "Wake up." The machine beeped, and the map flashed to life. Lyra gasped. How is she doing this? Mark didn't answer. He was watching the map. A red dot blinking in the corner. It was a distress signal, but not from today. It was from 11 years ago. The console printed out a string of text. Command Echo 9. If you're reading this. They've returned. Mark froze. That was his code, his signature, from long ago. The message was meant for him. But he had never sent it. Lyra stepped closer. What does it mean? It means I wasn't the only one who knew about them, Mark said, pointing to the wreckage above. Echo units. Biomachines left behind after the war, programmed to erase secrets. He turned to the red dot on the map. This signal. It's coming from the cradle zone. Lyra's face went pale. That place is cursed. Mark nodded. Not cursed. Hidden. The cradle was where it all began. He said, where hybrid tech was tested, where Sari's abilities may have been born. Suddenly, the screen glitched. A strange sound came through the speaker. Not a voice, not a word, but a hum, like something old was trying to speak. Sari stepped closer to the screen, her head tilted. I know this sound, she whispered. I've heard it in my dreams. The hum changed, turning into a faint pattern, a digital pulse. Mark's eyes widened. It's a ghost signal, Lyra asked. What's that? A message sent through forgotten code. Old frequencies, Mark explained. Only certain people or systems can hear it. He looked at Sari. And you're both. The signal pulsed again, faster now. Forming shapes on the screen, a face appeared blurry, glitching, but familiar. Mark stepped back. No, it can't be. Lyra leaned in. Who is it? Yalan. Mark said quietly, your husband? The image spoke through static. Mark, if you're seeing this, it means they've activated her. They will come for her. The voice continued. And when they do, you must take her to the cradle. There she will remember who she truly is. The message ended with coordinates. Deep within a restricted zone, silence filled the room. Lyra covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. He knew this day would come. Mark nodded slowly. He planned everything. They packed supplies quickly, rations, power cells, tools, old. Weapons, Sari carried nothing, just stared at the glowing map in her mind. I remember the cradle, she whispered, not with my eyes. But with something inside, Mark checked his scanner one last time. No more enemies nearby for now, but he knew what was coming. More machines, more soldiers. More secrets, and one truth buried in the heart of the cradle zone as they climbed. Back to the surface, leaving the house behind, Mark looked at the stars one last time. He had run from his past 4 years, but now the past was guiding him, and the future was walking beside him wearing a child's face, with eyes that glowed like starlight. The sky burned orange as the twin suns began to fall. Night on this planet didn't come quietly. It arrived like a warning, with sharp winds, cold air, and shadows that moved even when nothing was there. Mark led the way across the dead valley. Keeping close to the rocks, Lyra followed with Sari in her arms. The child hadn't spoken in an hour, her eyes half closed, glowing faintly like stars trapped under skin. They were heading to a cave one Mark had used during the war, a hidden shelter with power, supplies, and defenses buried deep. But it wasn't just a cave. It was the last checkpoint before reaching the cradle zone. Mark's hand gripped his weapon tight. Every step slow and careful, they reached the cave by nightfall. Just before the wind grew louder, inside, the air was still, dry, and filled with dust. Old metal crates lined the walls, marked with the fading logos of Earth's fallen armies. Mark activated the generators, and soft blue lights flickered on. He checked the scanner, still clear, no signals nearby, but that meant nothing. The echo units didn't always send signals, some hunted silently. He set up sensors at every entrance and powered up the defense grid. Then, he looked at Sari, sitting near the heater, her head resting on Lyra's shoulder. She's burning up. Lyra whispered, touching the girl's forehead. Too much energy inside. Mark knelt beside her. Can she control it? Lyra shook her head. Not yet. Mark looked into the child's eyes, seeing something old, far older than her age. He stood and walked to the far end of the cave, where an old locker stood. Inside was a weapon he hadn't touched in years, the Valkron blade. Half sword, half reactor, once used to fight machines like the echo units. He pulled it from its sheath and powered it on, its blue core humming gently as he turned. A sound broke the silence, a low, pulsing tone from the sensors. He ran too. The console, eyes narrowing, 5 dots, approaching fast, not walking, flying. They're here, he said. Striker class. Lyra grabbed Sari and backed into the shadows. What do we do? Mark looked at the defense grid. Half the systems were too old, barely online. We hold the line, he said. No running this time. Outside, the sound of engines roared through the canyon. Machines landed with crushing weight, dust flying in the dark, then silence. No voice, no command, just the sound of metal feet on stone. Mark stepped out onto the ledge, weapon ready, the blade in his hand, glowing faintly. The first attacker appeared, not human, not alien, A full combat drone with shifting armor and glowing red sensors. It moved fast, launching toward Mark with a sound like tearing air. Mark blocked with the blade, sparks flying as metal clashed. He spun, kicked, and struck again, taking down the first unit, but 4 more followed. Surrounding the cave, inside, Lyra held Sari close, whispering softly, "Stay with me. Little star, stay strong." Suddenly, the wall cracked. One of the machines smashed through, heading straight for them. But before it reached them, a surge of light filled the room. Sari stood up, her hands raised, eyes glowing like twin suns. The ground shook, and the machine stopped mid-step, frozen in place. Then, it dropped to the floor, completely shut down. Outside, Mark turned as 3 more drones rushed him. He fought hard, body aching, blade swinging, but they were too many. One struck his shoulder, another kicked him down. He hit the ground hard. Blood in his mouth, the sky spinning above. Then, a voice, small but strong, echoed through the night. "Stop." The machines froze, sensors blinking, systems flickering. Mark looked up, and there she stood, Sari, glowing like a beacon, standing in the cave entrance with her arms wide. The machines turned toward her, not to attack, but to kneel. Mark's eyes widened. What are they doing? Lyra stood behind her, breathless. They recognize her. Sari stepped forward, her voice clear. "You don't belong to them anymore." The machines shuddered, then powered down, one by one. Mark got to his feet, stunned. He had fought these machines before, watched them destroy entire outposts. But now they obeyed her. He walked to her side. "How did you do that?" Sari looked up at him. "I didn't make them stop," she said softly. "They chose to." She held out her hand, showing a strange symbol glowing on her palm, a mix of alien runes and human code. Mark stared at it, remembering something from years ago, a secret file called Key Protocol, a project meant to create a living command system. Something machines couldn't disobey, but it had failed. Or so they thought, until now, until her. Mark looked at the broken machines, at the glowing child, and at the dark horizon. "She's not just the key," he whispered. "She's the command." The land changed as they moved closer to the cradle. The mountains no longer looked like stone. They looked like bones, sharp. White ridges rose from the earth like broken spines, cutting the horizon in jagged pieces. Mark led the way on foot, weapon across his back, eyes scanning the valley with every step. Behind him, Lyra walked silently, holding Sari's hand. The girl's feet barely touched the ground, her skin faintly glowing with every heartbeat. It had been 2 days since the siege. The machines they had fought never woke again. But now, Sari could hear them. All of them, every sleeping drone buried deep, every forgotten AI left in the dirt, every hidden signal. "They're calling to me," she whispered. "They're afraid." Mark didn't answer, but he understood. He was afraid too. The Cradle Zone wasn't just a place on the map. It was where the war had started, and maybe where it had ended, long ago. Scientists tried to create a bridge between human and alien intelligence. Not through diplomacy, not through peace, but through blood. They called it the Cradle, a lab, a vault, and a graveyard, all in one. Now they were walking straight into it. They reached the edge by nightfall. The cliffs dropped into a massive crater, hundreds of meters deep. Covered in thick fog that pulsed with blue light, the ground around the crater shimmered like broken glass. Dead machines littered the area, some rusted, others still humming, alive but asleep. Sari stopped walking. She tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. "They're waiting," she said, "but not for me." Mark frowned. "Then who?" Sari turned to him. "You." Lyra stepped forward. "What do you mean?" Sari walked to a nearby wall, smooth, dark, untouched by wind or time. She placed her hand on it, and the wall cracked, splitting open. Like a blooming flower, inside was a door. No keyhole, no lock. Just a handprint glowing with light. Human light. Mark stared at it. It matched his own. Exactly. He placed his hand on it, and the door slid open with a deep hiss. Beyond it was silence and darkness. The three stepped inside. Walking into the heart of the forgotten lab, the halls were clean, untouched by years. Screens lit up as they passed, showing fragments of files, names, codes, and faces lost to history. Then, one screen blinked and spoke. "Welcome back, Commander Mark Juno." Mark stopped cold. "I never came here," he said. The voice replied, "You were meant to." Lights flickered on around them, showing rows of tanks, each filled with glowing blue liquid. Inside the tanks were children, not human, not alien, but something in between. Clones, frozen in time. "Project Unity," Lyra whispered, reading the faded label on the wall. Sari walked forward, past the tanks, toward the central chamber. There, a large console waited untouched for decades. Sari placed her hands on it, and it lit up like a star. A hologram appeared. A man with a kind face, eyes full of sadness. It was Yalin. "Hello, little one," the hologram said. "If you're seeing this, it means you're alive, and the world hasn't given up yet." Lyra covered her mouth, tears falling silently. The message continued. "This place was never meant to create soldiers. It was meant to create peace. But peace doesn't come from machines," Yalin said. "It comes from those who feel both fear and hope. And you, Sari, are the first true bridge." Sari's hands began to shake, the light growing stronger around her. Machines throughout the lab began to power on, slowly, gently, not as weapons, but as witnesses. They bowed their heads, lights dimming in respect. Mark looked at the files on the console, flipping through pages of his own name. His DNA, his blood. "I was part of this," he said softly, "without even knowing. You weren't supposed to." Sari replied, "You were a seed, hidden in time." Lyra stepped close. "What happens now?" Sari turned to them, her eyes brighter than before. "We open the rest." She pointed toward a massive door at the far end, locked behind ancient security. "What's behind there?" Mark asked. Sari answered, "The last generation." Before he could speak, the lights went red. A warning flashed across every screen. "Unauthorized unit detected, approach imminent." Mark drew his weapon. They followed us, but Sari didn't flinch. She walked to the center of the chamber, raised her hands, and said, "Then let them come. This is where it ends." The chamber glowed with a cold red light. Warnings flashed across every wall, every screen. "Unauthorized unit detected, system lockdown engaged, final protocol active." But Sari stood still, her arms raised, her glow brighter than ever. Machines, all around her powered up, not for war, but for protection. They stood between her and the door, forming a silent wall of steel and light. Mark placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you sure?" Sari looked up. "Yes. They came to erase me," she said, "but I remember now who I am." Behind the far wall, the massive vault door began to shake. Not from her, from them. The last enemy force had arrived. Not drones this time, not shadows or whispers, but full combat soldiers, humans in black armor, carrying weapons born of old science and stolen alien tech. They dropped from the sky in pods, landing across the crater like fire from the stars. Mark checked the defense grid. It was barely holding. "We can't stop all of them," he said. "There are too many." Sari looked at the machines still kneeling before her. "No," she said softly, "but they can." She walked to the center of the control platform and placed both hands on the core panel. Blue light exploded through the room, and everywhere in the cradle, every old drone, Every broken system, every silent AI came alive. They stood, turned, and faced the coming threat. Lyra stepped beside her daughter, whispering, "You were meant for this." Outside, the first shots were fired. Missiles hit the defense towers, plasma bolts burned the sky, but the machines fought back. Not with chaos, but with order. They moved like one, guided by her. Mark took position by the vault, firing his rifle into the smoke. Covering the machines as they pushed back wave after wave, the earth shook, but Sari stood strong. Then the vault behind her opened, slowly, with a deep, grinding sound. Inside was a chamber filled with light, and within it, a circle of pods, each one holding a child, just like Sari, sleeping, glowing faintly, untouched by war. "The Unity children," Sari whispered. "The ones who never woke." Mark stepped inside. Looking at the faces, "They're alive." Sari turned to him. "I can wake them. But only if I choose to finish the link." Mark paused. "What link?" Sari looked down. "Me. I was designed to be the first and the last. The signal that connects all of them. If I wake them," she said, "I disappear." "Become part of the system," Lyra gasped. "No, you're my daughter. Not just some design," but Sari smiled. "I am both, and I am not afraid." Mark looked at her, silent, heart heavy. He had protected her, fought for her, believed in her. Now she was ready to give herself for something larger than life. He knelt beside her. "If you go, will they be like you?" Sari nodded. "Better." Mark took a deep breath. "Then it's your choice." Outside, the enemy breached the gates, soldiers storming through with fire and rage. But just before they reached the vault, Sari touched the core with her fingertips. The chamber exploded with white light. Time seemed to freeze. The enemy stopped mid-step, weapons falling from their hands. The machines stood still, glowing, listening. And one by one, the pods began to open. The children inside blinked, looked around, and smiled. Connected, awake, alive, and Sari was gone. Her body had vanished, but her presence filled every corner of the cradle. Every machine turned toward the sky. And a single message was broadcast across the system. "We are not weapons. We are bridges. We choose peace." The enemy ships turned away, powered down, and left. No shots, no resistance, just silence. Lyra collapsed to her knees, tears falling silently. Mark stood still, eyes full of sorrow and pride. He walked to the platform, where a faint light still glowed. Her voice echoed once more, not from speakers, but from within. "Thank you for believing in me." Lyra whispered, "We always did." The cradle was alive now, not as a lab, not as a weapon, but as a symbol, a message that even in war, even in fear, humanity could choose to rise, to protect, not conquer, to connect, not destroy. Mark walked out of the cradle and looked up at the stars. One of them blinked a little brighter, and he smiled. "Legacy accepted," he said softly, then turned and walked toward a new sunrise.